A preposition is a word that shows the relationship of a noun or a pronoun to some other word in a sentence. They relate in terms of location, direction, time, cause, and possession. Let's look at some examples and see if we can find those relational words. I found Wilfred under the table. Subject I, verb found. In this case, the word Wilfred is a direct object, functioning as a direct object. And then the word under is that relational word. It tells the location of Wilfred. Therefore, it is a preposition. Let's look at another example, this one having to do with direction. Zoe traveled toward the setting sun. The subject is Zoe, and the verb is traveled. The directional word here is toward. It's the direction in which Zoe traveled. That is, therefore, my preposition. Remember that prepositions can also relate in terms of time. The fire burned for 3 hours. Subject, fire. The verb is burned. And for indicates that the fire was burning a certain length of time. So in this case, for is my preposition. Prepositions can also relate in terms of cause. We lost because of Bubba's fumble. Subject, we. Verb, lost. What's the reason that we lost? Because of Bubba's fumble. So in this case, we've got what's called a compound preposition. It's actually two words which join together to form one preposition. Last but not least, we have possession. The food from Georgia's restaurant spoiled. Subject, food. Verb, spoiled. In this case, from is your preposition, and it helps to indicate the ownership of the food or the possession of the food. Which food? The food from Georgia's restaurant. The best way to learn prepositions is to memorize the list, or at least a nice sampling from the list. Here are a few. About, above, after, around, before, beside, during, for, from, inside, onto, since, through, upon, with. Once you get the hang of prepositions, you start to recognize them even if you haven't committed them to memory, although committing them to memory is a good idea. Most prepositions are just one word, but some are what we call compound prepositions. Here are a couple of examples. Along with, aside from, in addition to, next to, on top of. Now, let me give you a few tips about prepositions. First, they always appear with a noun or a pronoun in what's called a prepositional phrase. The preposition is always the first word in the phrase, and the noun or the pronoun is the last word in the phrase. It's called the object of the preposition. There could be any number of modifiers between the preposition and the object. But remember, modifiers can only be adjectives and adverbs. Let's find the phrases in the previous examples. I found Wilfred under the table. Remember, we found the word under as our preposition. And if I read to the right, the first noun or pronoun I encounter is the word table. That is the object of the preposition. So my prepositional phrase is under the table. Zoe traveled toward the setting sun. Preposition is toward. Sun is a noun or a pronoun. In this case, a noun. It's the object of the preposition. And the word setting is an adjective modifying sun. What kind of sun? A setting sun. The fire burned for 3 hours. We've got our preposition, and remember, it's always the first word in a prepositional phrase. The noun or the pronoun, called the object of the preposition, is always the last word in the phrase. In this sentence, the word hours. We lost because of Bubba's fumble. There's one of those compound prepositions, and the word fumble is your object. Bubba's, in this case, is an adjective modifying fumble. Whose fumble? Bubba's fumble. The food from Georgia's restaurant spoiled. From Georgia's restaurant, spoiled. restaurant is the object of the preposition, and again, Georgia's is an adjective modifying restaurant. Second tip, prepositional phrases can usually be removed from a sentence without destroying the sentence. Bernie is the man from the debate team. Let's find the prepositional phrase. I'll first find the relational word, from. That must be my preposition. Next, I'll read until I spot a noun, the debate team. There's a noun. That must be the object. Next, I'll remove the whole phrase from the sentence, and I'm left with, Bernie is the man. Now, while this is a perfectly good English sentence, it lacks information. When I remove the phrase from the debate team, I change the meaning of my sentence. That's where prepositional phrases come in handy. They add information and clarity to a sentence. You can almost always remove a prepositional phrase from a sentence, but in a few select instances you cannot. Third prepositional tip. Prepositional phrases can be moved all over a sentence without destroying the sentence. When you move a prepositional phrase, sometimes the meaning stays the same and sometimes the meaning changes. So when placing a prepositional phrase in a sentence, make sure you know exactly what you mean. Let's look at some examples. Joe eats lunch during the baseball season. Subject Joe, verb eats. Lunch is a direct object. During the baseball season is my prepositional phrase. I recognize it because of the relational word during and because of the object of the preposition, season. If I were to move that to another part of a sentence, let's see if we have a change in meaning. Joe, during the baseball season, eats lunch. Subject still Joe, verb is still eats. My prepositional phrase is exactly the same, and in fact the meaning of these two sentences is the same. Let's look at another example. During the baseball season, there's my prepositional phrase at the beginning, Joe eats lunch. So you can see in this example, moving the prepositional phrase around makes no difference for the meaning of the sentence. Clearly, some of these sentences sound better than others, but they all mean the same thing and they all make sense. One more tip. There can be a whole bunch of prepositional phrases in a sentence, but all of them in this example. I went to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown with my nephew Daniel because of our great love for the game of baseball. Subject of this sentence is I, and the verb is went. To is a preposition. To the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame is the object of a preposition, and interestingly enough, it's a proper noun, the Hall of Fame, but it contains a prepositional phrase of its own. In Cooperstown, with my nephew Daniel, because of our great love for the game of baseball. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in one sentence.